Ladies and gentlemen, on today's episode, we have a full list of fishing accessories that I have bought over the past 2 years from Amazon that I have tested and I highly recommend to save you some money. We also have an interesting new soft plastic from Evergreen and Daiwa. We talk about your favorite species other than bass to target, and we dive into dangerous wind conditions, microfishing, and some bold predictions in this week's mailbag. All that and more on this episode of Tackle Talk.
Hello, everybody. I'm Bill Dance, and you're listening to Tackle Talk.
This is the Tackle Talk Podcast, brought to you by The Rod Locker. Premium gear and expert advice from a staff you can trust. Now, here's your host, Andrew Hayes.
Hey, everybody. Welcome back to the Tackle Talk Podcast. I appreciate you joining us today. Before we get into the episode, we do have to send a big thank you out to the boys over at The Rod Locker. You guys know that's where I buy my fishing gear from, is The Rod Locker. Brian, Chad, everybody over there have always been awesome to me and to all of the Tackle Talk listeners throughout the years. They're a great Midwestern company that cares about their customers, and they're working day and night to give you the best selection, the best shipping, the best customer service, and the best sales in the fishing industry. You guys heard a couple weeks ago, we got an exclusive buy one, get one free Shimano Zodius offer. They just ran an insane Dobbins sale like a week ago. So be sure to check them out. Keep tabs on them over at their website, on their Facebook page. If you follow their Facebook page, they do something called Wildcard Wednesday, where they pick a handful of their used gear, which is already at great prices, and they discount them even more. And you can watch them go through each item on Facebook, and they post that. Really cool idea. You never know what you're going to get every single week. So be sure to follow them on Facebook so you can see those deals and those flash sales when they happen. I would highly encourage you to become a Rod Locker Platinum member. That pays for itself for me within the first order that I make. You get free shipping, you get bonus money back, you get bonus sales, you get an exclusive Facebook page, you get first dibs at things that are highly in demand that come in over at the Rod Locker. Just well worth joining up every single year. And like I said, one of those things that pays for itself right away. So you can head over to www.rodlocker.com. Check out their entire selection of new and used gear. I have been reliably informed there are some insane sales coming up here pretty soon that you're going to want to keep an eye out for. But again, it is rodlocker.com. And as always, you can use code TackleTalkApril through the rest of April. And then once we hit May, the Tackle Talk code is going to be Tackle Talk May. So that's all one word, Tackle Talk April, and that code is good through April 30th. And then once we hit May 1st, which will be on Friday of this week, our code will switch to Tackle Talk May. That saves you 5% off your entire order. Sale stackable, a great code to just use every single time. Over at the Rod Locker, save some money. It lets them know that we sent you. It's a win-win for everybody. Rodlocker.com and code Tackle Talk April. All right, everybody, let's get into some news here. And the first thing I want to go over is a new soft plastic that caught my eye this week that I saw the press release of. And I thought, you know what? At least that is different enough that I want to mention it on the show and talk through this really fast. So a new Craw is coming out from Evergreen, and it says Evergreen's new claw motion masters the backsliding technique, utilizing precision salt offsetting and a decisive gravity-defying design to reach the once unreachable. So those are some pretty bold claims and some crazy words there. So let's read a little bit of this press release that I was sent. It says, bass anglers are arguably the greatest tinkerers on earth. Their manipulation and experimentation of soft plastics alone would impress even Dr. Frankenstein, championing rigging inventions that include the Nico, glide, wacky, shaky, donkey, drop shot, chicken, and more. Today, the tactical darling of the elite is backsliding. This technique is designed to defy physics by sending the bait backwards deep into the shadows where bass feel safest. At its core, backsliding is a tactical departure from the vertical plop of traditional soft plastics. While a conventional Texas rig or jig falls straight down or follows the arc of the line back toward the angler, a backsliding bait is designed to glide in the opposite direction by shifting the bait's center of gravity toward the tail. The lure utilizes its own hydrodynamics to swim back away on slack line. Upon entry, instead of pulling away from the target, the bait hunts deeper into the darkness of an overhang, dock, or brush pile. Generally, backsliding requires surgical rigging, precision placement of nail weights, and screw locks to force a bait to glide away from the angler upon entry. Rigging is high effort and high maintenance. but Evergreen just changed the math. The new Evergreen Claw Motion is a purpose-built gliding machine. Crafted specifically for the wildly popular backsliding technique, this 3-inch tactical craw also doubles as a skipping bait, finesse jig trailer, and can be effectively Texas rigged. The Claw Motion's gravity-defying glide is a result of calculated material density. Unlike uniform soft plastics, the Claw Motion features a precision salt offsetting strategy, infusing the tail section with high-density salt while keeping the head section light. This graduated weight distribution forces a natural backslide glide on the fall, eliminating the need for cumbersome external weighting. And then it's got some info here about it's got a scent profile that's infused with, Evergreen's squid-based attractant. I think they have in all of those soft plastics. So that's obviously a scent piece there. They recommend it rigged on a 3/0 extra wide gap hook. And then they recommend like 14 to 18 pound fluorocarbon, like Daiwa Samurai, Hidden Concept, or something like that. And then it says if you're using a braided mainline, you need to incorporate a lengthy fluorocarbon leader. Then it says whether you're skipping under sun-soaked docks or hunting giants in heavy timber, the Evergreen Claw Motion provides one thing every angler craves: unrestricted access. So basically what you have here is a new craw bait from Evergreen, who is distributed in the US by Daiwa, I believe. So this is under the Daiwa family, at least for us here in the US. But we have this craw that has more of like a punch bait look to it. It's got a fatter kind of butt section, hydrodynamic, so that butt end of that craw clearly falls down first, even weightless. And then you go up to these kind of fairly toned down looking pinchers. This doesn't look like a hard flapping craw. Again, it looks more like a punch style bait. But the cool part about this is the bait's weighting. I don't really care about the scent profile or any of that kind of stuff. I just think where and how they added their salt in this bait is probably the most interesting piece. So it sounds like they've loaded the butt section of that craw, that big kind of fatter area that clearly is meant to fall first. They've loaded that heavy salt, and then they've tapered off that salt toward the head. So you have way less salt in the top head and the pinchers than you do in that butt. So what you have in theory is a weighted, weightless soft plastic. You're getting into kind of like the Yamamoto, Yamatanuki territory here with like a strategically weighted soft plastic that's meant to be thrown weightless to see the special action that they've put in this bait. And so the action is what they call, and what a lot of people call, backsliding. And I think backsliding is the easiest way to think about that. Is kind of like the action that Berkeley went for a couple years ago with the Credge. And we all saw that the Credge was not a huge success, which is why it's probably in your local clearance bin at your local retailer. But the idea was this backsliding motion, a bait that falls away from you, the angler, on slack line and back toward the fish. So back in a fish's face that's following it, or back into crevices or under docks or brush piles, all that, because it doesn't fall straight down. It falls kind of sliding backwards, which obviously is where you get the name backsliding. But to rig this bait, you're going to rig it upside down. So the claws are actually going to be pointed up, not down on that EWG hook, which is why I think it looks like they added a lot of meat to kind of the head section of this craw, because that's where you're initially going to poke your hook through, not through the butt of the craw like you're used to doing. You're actually going to poke through the head and then come out the eyes instead of that back end like you do on a normal Texas rig. And then since there's no bullet weight because you're actually throwing this weightless, that heavier back end of that craw is what naturally wants to fall down first. And then your pinchers will be faced up, and you still have that look of that craw with your line still naturally pointed all the way up, and it's not pointed down at the bottom of the lake because you've got that weight kind of drawing it down. If you think about how a Texas rig actually falls, it actually falls on like a very sharp U of your line. This is the opposite, where it keeps that line straight up and down. So they're going for that backsliding action of this soft plastic craw. I think it's an interesting idea. You can color me a little skeptical on if that salt addition at one side of this bait really does give it that magic backsliding movement all the time. We'll see. But for as much as they cost, I hope they do, because they are very expensive. They are $12 for a 7-pack. So almost $2 a craw. That hurts. So I really, really hope that these have that action that they were going for, because if not, paying $2 per craw is going to be a tough pill to swallow. So I'm probably not picking these up right away, but I am at least intrigued enough by the design to kind of file this away in my keep an eye on folder. All right, let's keep moving here. The next thing we're going to talk about here today, funny enough, I was going through and I was doing my taxes a couple weeks ago, and I was looking back at some of my expenses this year and some of the things that I had spent money on and just cleaning out a lot of my receipt drawer. And I came across a lot of my receipts from Amazon purchases throughout the last year or two. And as I started to look through them, I thought, man, there are some things in here that I bought from Amazon that were not very expensive at all, that I bought for fishing that did a really good job, and I'm glad that I bought them. And when you look through a lot of these, they weren't like the biggest, flashiest things. They weren't crazy expensive rods or reels or anything like that. It was a lot of like normal accessories that I feel like I got at a really, really good price, or I got like a generic or knockoff version of something that should have cost me a lot more, that again, I'm really glad I bought from Amazon over the past year or two. I feel like a lot of the stuff on that list was like $8 to $20 accessories. And I thought, you know what? The listeners of Tackle Talk would probably appreciate hearing about some of these, because I guarantee there's some of you that were in the same boat that I was, that you're trying to do some kayak rigging, or you're trying to buy some accessories, but you just can't swallow the price tag of the name brand version. I've got some great options for you today and some kind of hidden gems that I've found throughout the years on Amazon. So that's what we're going to do today. I've got probably, 10 or so items that I'm going to highlight today. I've got way more than that I've bought over the years, but I just picked 10 that I thought would be really good to talk about. And you guys will love me because I got on top of my game and I have a link, a direct link to every single one of these items that we're going to talk about today. The exact item. We're talking size, we're talking brand, everything that I use. The exact link to the exact same product that I will be talking about will be in the show notes today. So you're going to see like 10 links in the show notes that you can click on that'll take you to Amazon to the exact product I'm talking about. Because especially when you're dealing with generics and someone says, oh, just go look up, and they give you the description. Well, there's 10,000 versions of these things on Amazon, all under different random like Asian names and stuff. And it's just hard sometimes to know exactly what item the person's talking about. So direct links to every single item we talk about will be in the show notes today. So just swipe up, or, whatever podcast platform you're on, go to the description for today's episode, and you can simply click those links and it will take you right to where you can order these same items that I'm talking about. So let's get started here. The first item that we're going to go with is ironically the most expensive item on our list, and it's only $99. So that should give you an idea of the type of items we're talking about today. This is kind of by far and away probably the most expensive item, and it's under $100. And that item is my headlamp. And I know what you're thinking, $99 for a headlamp. Why? I can go to Walmart. I can buy a cheap $8 headlamp from Walmart. Why in the world would I spend $100 on a headlamp? I guess my answer to that would be because this one is awesome. I used to be like you, right? I used to be the one that said, hey, I'm just going to put my little 2 AA powered $5 Walmart headlamp on my head, and I'm just going to go out and use it. And that headlamp has like about as much light as an iPhone flashlight, and that definitely works. You can use that in a pinch if you just need something that will kind of help you see a little bit in the dark. Then yes, your little $5 or $10 headlamp can work. But about 4 or 5 years ago, I was out night fishing. I was with my buddy Ryan. I had my cheap headlamp on, and he had recently bought an expensive headlamp online. And at the time, I remember laughing at him. I was like, dude, you do not need a $100 headlamp. Like, these work fine. And I thought that until I saw his headlamp. And if my headlamp was as powerful as like an iPhone flashlight, his were like the high beams on my Toyota Tacoma. So after being stubborn for probably about a year or so, I finally caved and I bought the same one. And it has been worth every single penny that I spent on it since I bought this headlamp. So when you're loading your boat or your kayak in like the early morning or late in the evening after dark, the ability to light up everything in front of you so seamlessly and see every single thing you're doing is so nice. But then if I'm actually in my kayak in the dark, I can turn my head and look one way or the other and I can see so far. It is like having the dang sun on your forehead in the middle of the night, and it is such a convenient thing to have that big of a field of vision to work with. So loading and unloading in the dark, fishing in the night, Getting back a little later than you thought you were going to because you're a degenerate like me and you can't leave biting fish. And then the next thing you know, it's pitch black outside and you wish that you would have left an hour ago and been smart so that you could see what you're doing. This headlamp takes every single worry or inconvenience out of being in the dark. So the headlamp that I use is the Phoenix, and it's spelled Fenix, and it's $99. It's the Phoenix HM70R. It's USB chargeable. It's got a removable, interchangeable, rechargeable battery, so you can bring more than one with you if you're going on like a multi-day trip or something. It's comfortable. It's like 1600 lumens, so you can see like 200 yards away with it. It's waterproof. It's lightweight. It's got multiple brightness modes. It's got a red LED mode if you want that, and you get a lifetime warranty with it. So just an awesome headlamp that, like I said, was a tough pill to swallow at first, but was well worth the investment after I bought it. That is the Phoenix HM70R, and it's available on Amazon for $99, and the link is in the show notes. And you can do your research on Phoenix. If you go to the Phoenix website, you will see that they are a very legit flashlight, headlamp, safety equipment company. This is not like some random Amazon brand that you find on Amazon. I just like that I can order it from Amazon because shipping is fast and I'm just comfortable ordering from Amazon. So the Phoenix, Fenix HM70R. That link will be in the show notes. You can click it. It'll be the first link down there, available on Amazon for 99 bucks. Okay, let's go from expensive to inexpensive, and we'll move right into something that every angler needs: pliers. And you're going to hear a billion different brands tell you that their pliers are the best. Every Cast King guy will tell you that Cast King pliers are the best. Bubba guys will tell you that their overpriced $70 Bubba pliers are the best. But the reality is, you don't need $70 pliers to get a jerkbait out of a smallmouth's mouth, or to take a treble hook off of a split ring, or to cut braid, or anything like that. I can do all of those things with a pair of pliers that I bought off Amazon for a small fraction of the price. So the pliers that I've used over the last few years have just been some rando Amazon pliers that I found a couple years ago, and I really do like. And they're called the True Send fishing pliers, TRUSCEND. And they're $19.99 for the A1 Black model. That's the model that I have. Make sure you get that one, because if you go to their more expensive options, they ironically lack some of the features that I actually really like on the cheaper version. So be sure to get the A1 Blacks that are $19.99. They are stainless steel. I haven't had a bit of issue with rusting or corrosion or sticking or anything like that. And I treat these like crap. Like, they sit out in the rain, they sit in piles of water. They are awesome little pliers. They're also very comfortable because they have kind of a rubberized non-slip handle on them that I really like. They do have that little lip thing on them so that you can take care of split rings super easy. They come with a leash and a carabiner so you can clip them to your boat or your kayak so you never lose them. And they do have a very sharp side cutter piece that you can use to cut all types of fishing line: braid, fluoro, mono. I cut them all with no issues. And there's just kind of a great do-all pair of pliers. They even come with a little sheath that you can store them in if you want. And like I said, they've just been a rock-solid pair of pliers for under 20 bucks. So those are the True Send fishing pliers. Again, the link to those will be in the show notes today. Okay, let's keep moving on here. The next thing that I have is a little bit more random, but it's something that I never knew I needed until I bought them. And they're called Skyletti fishing rod and billiard Q-tips. So these are just kind of like small plastic clips that you can mount to the wall. You screw them in with one screw, and then you can clip your rod to them so that they stand straight up and down on the wall for storage. So what I did, these are great for like the top part of your rod. For the bottom piece, like the butt section, all I did was take a piece of PVC pipe and I made like a little bottom rack out of it. So I drilled a little like 1.5 inch hole in the PVC about 10 times to hold 10 rod butts. And I spaced them out, I don't know, a couple inches apart, like accordingly. And I only drilled that hole through one part of the PVC pipe so that it hits the other side when you put the butt section in there. It's kind of hard to explain, but I used that to make the bottom part of my mount. And then the top part are just these little Skyletti rod and billiard Q-tip clips. And I put those on the wall about 3 or 4 feet above that little piece of PVC. And I did this in my garage, and now I have enough space to hold like 10 rods in a really small area. And they look so nice. They're straight up and down. They look like they'd be on like a display shelf in a store or something. Great, great way to store rods. Very, very inexpensive. I think for the Skyletti clips and for the PVC and all my materials, screws, everything, I think I was probably in this like $14 total to make this whole rod rack. And the big piece of that is these little Skyletti clips. It's just like the coolest looking but most redneck cheap thing that I've ever put in my garage. But again, I get compliments on it all the time. It looks great. So these little rod clips are $9.99 for a 40 pack. So that's enough to hold 40 rods for $9.99. And then you can go to like Home Depot, like I said, buy you a little PVC or a little piece of wood or something to make the bottom part of that rod rack. I'm sure there are some of you that are probably having a little tough time visualizing this, and I don't blame you because it's kind of tough to do in a podcast, but just send me a DM. Just shoot me a message on Instagram or Facebook or email or whatever, and I will send you a picture of what my rod rack looks like, and that'll make a whole lot more sense probably. But again, I'm super glad that I bought these little clips. Now, the only issue with them is they're a little wide if you're going to put very, very small spinning rods in them. So I would recommend storing the spinning rods in a rod sleeve, because what they want to do is they just kind of want to fall out because the gap on these clips is a little too wide for like a really, really small, like a ultralight or a little kid's rod or something, but they're great for full-on bass rods. But the easy way to solve that is just to store all of your rods in rod sleeves, and then you have no problem at all, or rod socks or whatever you call them. And I store all of mine, like all 10 of mine in a row in rod sleeves, and it just looks awesome. So cannot recommend these enough. They are little Skyletti fishing rod and billiard cue clips available on Amazon. Link is below. All right, everybody, we'll get back to the episode here in just a second. But first, the Tackle Talk podcast is powered by Amped Outdoors. And Amped Outdoors is an industry leader in lithium batteries, engineered and built for all kinds of marine applications. We're talking trolling motors, we're talking graphs, live sonar, ice fishing, kayak motors, you name it, Amped has a battery for you. And with Amped, you get the highest quality components, you get waterproof case designs, and for their bigger batteries, you get Bluetooth connectivity and heated charging standard. And you get all of that plus a 10-year no-gimmick warranty and world-class customer support based right here in the United States in Hudson, Wisconsin. And I've been running these batteries really hard the past year, and the added tech of Bluetooth and heated charging alone has been a godsend, on top of them just being incredibly reliable and affordable batteries that cost like half the price of the batteries that I used to buy. So I cannot recommend these enough. Great people, a great company, great products from the folks over at Amped Outdoors. So you can head over to www.ampedoutdoors.com and take a look for yourself at the tons of different models and options they offer at incredible prices. Again, great lithiums, great prices over at www.ampedoutdoors.com. Keeping moving here, the very next one I have is a very simple purchase I made when I first got my new kayak, and these little things have made my life so much easier, and they are retractable carabiners. Because there are just certain things that I always lose in my kayak, and I hate buying new ones of. The little magnet that you have to use for your Newport throttle that acts as like a kill switch, I lose that thing all the time. I lose my pliers all the time. I misplace little snips and stuff like that. So I use these retractable carabiners to fix all of my issues with losing things that I need right beside me at all times. So on my right, when I'm sitting in my kayak, I have two retractable carabiners at all times. One of them has that Newport magnet on it so that I can use my throttle normal and I never have to worry about losing that thing, and it's always tethered to my kayak. And the other one is clipped to my pliers. Now, I told you earlier, the pliers that I use come with a little carabiner and a little leash, but I want them to be retractable because I don't want that big leash sitting down there, by my feet or by my side that can get tangled in things. I want it to be retractable. When I let go of these pliers, I want them to go right beside me and stay there. And that's the cool part about a nice kind of clean retractable system. So I can literally grab my pliers, pull them up, use them for whatever I need, cut, pull lures out of fish's mouths, whatever. And then I just kind of let go of them and they go right back to by my side. That's what's so nice about having retractable carabiners. And you can put all types of things on these. Like you could put your phone. I think that would be a really good idea actually, because you never want that to go overboard. If there was a little spot on your phone to clip a little like keyring O or something, or you have a little loop on your phone somewhere that you could actually hook this to, it would be so nice because then you just know that you cannot lose your phone in the kayak. Like there are certain times where, I'll be trying to take a picture of a fish on a catch board and it flops or something, and then you never know really bad things can happen to your phone. But anything that you don't want to lose, you can just tether to one of these retractable carabiners, and they're awesome. Very convenient, very inexpensive, something that everybody should have on their kayak. So the ones that I use are actually $6.39 right now for a 3-pack. So you get like $2 a piece. Well worth the investment. They are all black. They're classy looking. They're durable. I've used them for years at this point. I had them on my old kayak. I have them on my new kayak. These exact same ones for like $2 each. Well worth it. You'll thank me later. So these are just called retractable keychain 3-pack heavy-duty carabiners on Amazon. Again, the link will be down below if you want to pick those up as well. All right, next up here, we're going to talk about Kydex for a second. And kayak guys, listen up. Stop overpaying for your keel guards. There is no reason that you should be paying $60 for a keel guard for the front and then $60 for the back of your kayak. There are way better, way thicker, more durable, way cheaper options out there to make a keel guard. So Kydex is the material that I use. It's a thermoform material that a lot of people use to make like gun holsters and all that kind of stuff. But today we're specifically talking about using them for a keel guard. So you can just cut a piece of this Kydex to the size of your keel guard that you want to make, and then you flip your kayak over upside down and use a heat gun on that Kydex to mold it to your keel. You gently use that heat gun so you don't melt it too bad, but you do want it to get warm enough that it becomes malleable. And then you use the bottom of your kayak as like the template to form this thing around. And then once you get it to the form that you actually want, then you turn your heat gun off, you let this Kydex cool, and once it cools and returns to like normal temperature, bam, it's as hard as can be, and it is the perfect, thick, durable keel guard. And then when you want to secure that keel guard to the bottom of your kayak, I trust good old-fashioned marine goop, G-O-O-P, goop. The stuff is awesome. It's what I use anytime I need to adhere something, especially something that's going to have the chance to either be in water or get wet a lot of times. Marine goop is awesome. It is a marine grade adhesive, and you just want to make sure that your kayak and the Kydex are clean and dry before you do this. And then you apply that goop really generously to that keel guard that you made, and then you're going to press it down on the bottom of your kayak and hold it there to let it dry. You can set something like a little bit heavier on top of it if you want to keep that pressure on it for a little bit. But I have done this on 2 separate kayaks, and that DIY keel guard kicks the snot out of an expensive like Burley Pro keel guard that I've bought in the past. So the exact Kydex pieces that I use and the goop that I use are linked in the show notes as well. I use the 0.08 thickness Kydex. That's perfect for me. And again, like I said, I have beat the tar out of these keel guards. I have abused them. I am a river rat. I'm in shallow water. I'm throwing this kayak everywhere. I'm dragging it. It does not matter. You cannot hurt this Kydex stuff. And even way down the road, if you do, well, guess what? It costs you like almost no money to replace these. So it's perfect for what I do. And I guarantee if it holds up to me, it will hold up to you as well. So the 0.08 thickness Kydex is on Amazon for $15.98 for 2 8x12 sheets. That is more than enough to do the front and back of your kayak at the 2 pieces of the keel that are most likely to hit something when you're dragging in the back and then when you hit something in the front. So do your front, do your back for $16. You quite literally cannot beat that with anything else out there. And like I said, I have abused these. They are bulletproof. It is awesome material to use for a keel guard. And then the goop adhesive that I use is $9.95 per tube. So again, affordable, super durable. Both of those are linked below if you want to make your own keel guards, save a ton of money, and just get a better product in the end. Okay, next, let's move to some quote-unquote knockoff items that you should buy on Amazon for kayak rigging versus paying 2 to 4 times as much for the name brand version, kind of in the same vein as what we just talked about with the keel guard. So first off is a through-haul kit. A through-haul kit should not cost you $25 or $30 for 2 little through-haul units. That is absurd. A through-haul kit is quite literally just a piece of plastic with a little ring and some rubber that you can use to make a watertight spot to run cords through your kayak hull so you're not getting water in that hole that you just made. That way you can rig like graphs, transducers, power cables, all that kind of stuff through the inside hull of your kayak, and then you tuck those cords and you don't have to worry about it. Keep the cords inside your kayak, not outside your kayak. And those through hole kits are great, but the Yak Attack kits that they sell are like $25 for 2 of them. Do not pay that. Instead, go over to somewhere like Amazon and you can get the exact same kit for $10.99 for 2 of them. So well under half price, $25 versus $10.99. And they work just as well. They're basically the exact same thing. And I've used these on the last 3 kayaks that I've actually rigged. So the ones that I use are called the Chang Ta through hull wiring kits. The link is below, as all of these items are. $10.99 for the exact same thing as the Yak Attack version at under half the price. Enough said. Now, along those same lines, if you're like me and you have a NK180 or an NK300 Newport motor on your kayak and you want to add quick connects to your battery so that you can quickly attach or detach both your battery and your motor so that you can kind of leave the wiring of your motor inside your kayak at all times, and then you just have a quick connect at the battery and a quick connect at the motor so you can take both out. The problem is when you order a Newport, depending on how old that motor is, it either has 0 quick connects or 1 quick connect already wired up. So you're at least going to have to add 1, if not 2. When you go to do that, do not buy the one from Newport. I repeat, do not go on their website and buy the one from Newport. That battery quick connect kit that they sell over on the Newport website, it works, but it's $60. And all that kit is 2 Anderson connectors. You do not need to pay $60 for Anderson connectors. Please do not do that. If you don't feel comfortable making your own little connections and doing everything there, Amazon actually has the exact same kit that Newport sells. The same 8-gauge wire, the same ring terminals, the same Anderson connectors, all of it already assembled. All you have to do is splice the wires like you would have to do with the Newport one. It comes with the Allen wrench. It comes with a battery terminal wrench. Everything you need is the exact same kit that Newport sells, but the one on Amazon is $23.50, not $60. So like a third of the price for the exact same dang thing. These are basic parts. These are things you can get at your hardware store. These are not something specific or special to Newport that they make for their motors or for their wiring. They're just putting the kit together for you and then charging like 3 times as much because it's on their website. Well, Amazon now does the exact same thing for $23.50. So save money, stop throwing it away because it's on the Newport website. This is one of those things that gets me so riled up when I see people fall for it and buy the Newport Quick Connect system. Don't fall for it. Anderson connectors do not cost $60. Go on Amazon, same kit, just over $20. Okay, and our last knockoff type item here, I guess you could call it, comes from Viver. And Viver is that orange and black company that you see around every once in a while that makes really inexpensive copies and, knockoffs of all kinds of stuff. They do tools, they do equipment, auto parts, appliances, hardware. Viver's kind of like Ryobi, I guess, would be a good comparison. Cheap, kind of homeowner grade, not commercial grade, but equipment that is way cheaper and 99% of the time will do the job just fine. Well, today we have something that almost every kayak angler needs, and that's a kayak cart. And this is kind of like the opposite of the headlamp that we talked about earlier. My buddy has the Wilderness Systems cart that everybody buys, everybody talks about. And although it's nice, it's $220, and it is definitely not $220 nice. It definitely does the job. It looks nice, but I don't think I need to spend $220 on a kayak cart. So I went looking online. I thought there's got to be a better solution. And the option that I found came from Viver. So I found the Viver Heavy Duty Kayak Cart on Amazon for $77.90. So again, like a third of the price of the Wilderness Systems cart and a very, very similar product. You've got solid 12-inch tires that don't need inflated. They're just the rigid tires that have decent traction on them. They've got rubberized adjustable bunks to fit any kayak size or hull. And then you just set it once, tighten the knobs, and forget about it. And for the rest of time, you now have a perfectly tailored cart specifically for however your kayak hull is shaped. It also comes apart very, very easily. So if you want to store it inside your kayak hull, you could do that. It's got a kickstand, which is a really nice touch and makes loading and unloading a whole lot easier, and something that a lot of the more expensive carts like the Wilderness System do not have. Again, I have abused this poor cart. I have used it for well over a year now. It has not skipped a beat. I have used it side by side with my buddy's Wilderness Systems cart, and I have no reservations buying this cart. So again, you do not have to pay $220 for a kayak cart. In fact, I would beg you not to. When there are great options like that Beaver cart out there for a third of the money, save your money and use that, $140 to go buy something else you want. So kayak cart from Beaver, again, like all of these products, is linked directly below. So there you go. I don't know what that is. Probably 9 or 10 different items on Amazon that I'm glad that I've purchased over the last year or two. And I figured some of these could probably help you guys out there too. I know everybody's trying to save money. Everybody's trying to find alternative options to spending like big money on some of the things that it hurts to spend big money on. These are a couple of the items that I think do that pretty well. So like I said 100 times, the direct links to every single product we just talked about are in the show notes and the description of today's episode. So whatever item or any or all of the items that you want to look at and maybe purchase and save some money yourself, you can go directly to that item. You don't have to worry about trying to search it on Amazon. So I hope that helps some of you save some money and get some nice accessories that you don't have to pay an arm and a leg for. All right, everybody. Next up, let's roll into this week's fishing poll. But first, as you know, the Tackle Talk podcast and the fishing poll are brought to you in part by Humminbird. And right now, you can save up to 300% off a brand new Humminbird Explore unit and $200 off Mega Live 2 over on the Humminbird website. So the Explore units are their wildly popular new line of graphs. They're offered in 9-inch, 10-inch, and 12-inch models. They've got full HD displays with really nice responsive touchscreens. You can get them with a transducer so that you already have Mega side imaging and Mega down imaging good to go. You get internal GPS and Humminbird base map. And with that, you have the charts and maps of over 10,000 lakes in the United States alone, with depth markers, contours, hazards, and a ton more already included and loaded on those units. And those Explore units pair really nicely with Humminbird Mega Live 2, which is their all-in-one live sonar transducer, which, by the way, doesn't require any sort of black box or additional units to store like some of the other competitors do, which is really nice for you kayak folks out there. And both of those are on sale right now on the Humminbird website, and you can take advantage of this limited time offer by heading over to humminbird.com. The Tackle Talk podcast is also brought to you in part by Minn Kota. And the last time I checked, I think there were like 21 different Minn Kota motors and trolling motors to choose from over on the Minn Kota website. They've got options from 12 volt all the way up to 36 volt. They've got bow mount or transom mount options. You can get shaft lengths from like 30 to 100 inches. The possibilities are endless with Minn Kota. But the cool part is they have something for any budget. So you can get into something like a Minn Kota Edge trolling motor for a few $100, all the way up to like the top of the line Altera. So go see for yourself all of the options for your next boat or kayak build over at www.minnkotamotors.com.
This is the Tackle Talk Podcast Fishing Poll. Brought to you by Humminbird. Explore more at humminbird.com.
All right, everybody. This week on the fishing poll, we have a pretty fun topic to explore. And the question that I posed to you all over the past week was, what is your favorite species to target other than bass? And I know that you guys all like to target bass because you're listening to the Tackle Talk Bass Fishing Podcast. So we're going to safely assume that your love of bass is a given. I'm not here to question your alliance to the almighty mouths, both large and small. I want to know what other species you take joy in catching, because there's so many different ways you can go with this. You can go with a species that is somewhat similar in size and technique to bass, like maybe walleye, saugeye, sauger. You could go with something that you want to target just because of the sheer size and brute force with pike maybe, or you could go with the challenge of the highs and the lows of musky fishing. You could go with like way smaller, skinnier moving water like trout fishing perhaps. You could go with a little less stress and maybe a little bit more success with panfish like crappie or bluegill. There's just so many ways you can take this question. Maybe Those of you that live near saltwater, I could probably see some saltwater species making their way into this list. Some snook, especially if you like fishing for bass. I'm guessing you probably like fishing for snook if there are snook around you. Or maybe you just like fishing for like bottom feeders, like catfish, and relaxing a little bit. Maybe you like chasing carp on ultralight line. Like, the possibilities are endless for what other species that you love to fish for. But for me, my favorite target species outside of bass is muskie. It has to be. And for me, bass fishing is very analytical. It's very predictable. There's more of a science most of the time, I would say, to bass fishing, especially when you compare it to something like muskie fishing. There's still a lot of mystery left for me with muskie. And I think that's probably what I like about it. I don't fully understand them, and I don't think many people do, to be honest. And I like trying to figure out what makes them tick, what makes them eat, weather, moon phases, color choice, day or night. They are just such a bipolar fish. They either A, don't give two you-know-whats about your presence or your bait, nothing. You can literally go right over them with a boat. You can cast an 8-ounce dog toy-sized bait right at their head. They just do not care. They just kind of mosey around and ignore you. Or B, they're a giant, 40 to 50-inch apex predator that is thrashing so violently, chasing so fast in pursuit, just flexing their muscles and showing you that they are the top of the food chain in that water system, and you better not forget it. There is no middle ground with muskie. They are either so unbothered by anything or full pedal to the metal at any given time. And their quirks about how they follow a bait and then don't commit, but then they'll commit on the 10th turn of your figure 8, or how they just kind of roam in one sort of confined area for, a few hundred feet over hours and hours with no rhyme or reason as to why or when they move. I love all that kind of stuff. It's very interesting. But here's the big one. It's weird about muskie is their clear shyness for sonar. I think that's really interesting. I've watched muskie that could not be bothered by anything else actively move away from sonar beams, specifically live forward-facing sonar. And it's not necessarily perspective or landscape mode as much as it is just regular forward mode. Those fish around here do not like that forward-facing beam hitting them. So if I have that with me, it's actually a disadvantage most of the time for me to point it in their direction. So if I have live sonar at all, it's more to make sure that I'm in the right cove or the right creek or pocket where fish are present or bait looks good, or I get a quick glance of the overall water column versus actually using that live sonar to target these fish. So there's all kinds of cool things with muskie that I like. But then there's just the reward of actually getting one of those fish in the net. The fight is so fun. The initial bite stops you in your tracks. Then the challenge of trying to get the hooks out of a thrashing mouth full of razor sharp teeth. And then finally, you get this 15 to 20 seconds with that fish in your hands where you actually feel like you're holding this giant prehistoric looking water dinosaur. And then afterwards, you get to watch that fish kick away safely. Those feelings never get old. With bass fishing, I would argue that not every fish is special. So many fish you just catch and immediately toss back in the water just to get back to fishing. With muskie, every fish and every encounter is special. So my answer is muskie number 1. My second place for me would probably be the walleye family, I guess. So I'm going to group saugeye, walleye, and sauger all together for the purpose of this one. Those fish, catching them in the middle of the night, in the dead of winter with really fun tactics big Smithwick rogues, swim baits, donkey rigs is a ton of fun. And the one thing that I love about those, especially river saugeye and walleye, is the initial bite. That bite, that thump that they give you is so distinct, it's so recognizable that I can tell you immediately before I even set the hook if what just bit me is a saugeye or a walleye or some other type of fish. Now, you can say the rest of the fight leaves something to be desired sometimes, and that's definitely true. There's the old joke that sometimes it feels like you're reeling in a wet blanket, and that can be true sometimes, but there are other times where those fish do have a lot of fight in them. But I would still say that the initial bite is what's so much fun. And then third, I guess I'll probably go hybrid bass, maybe. I'll put those up there. So I'm talking about hybrids half white bass, half striper. Those are a blast. Trout, I don't know about trout. Every once in a while, it's fun to go trout fishing, but I don't like how fragile they are. If I had better trout fishing around me and I could actually target big browns or something, I think it would probably be a little different. I also want to go steelhead fishing at some point, but we don't have those down here either, so that's not going to be an option. Those are probably my favorite, I would say. I would say number 1 is muskie, number 2 is walleye or sawguy, and then I'd probably go hybrids. I mean, I guess you could put crappie in there, but they're just too easy sometimes. The fight isn't great. They school up a little too much for me, and they're not quite as fun of a chase. I like crappie. I do target them from time to time, but they're definitely not one of my favorites, I would say. But let's see what you guys said. I'm interested to see where you guys took this because I honestly have no clue where you're going to go. But let's see. I'm opening this up right now. And okay, so we have 3, I would say, pretty popular answers. The number 1 answer with 18.5% of the vote, so almost a fifth, pretty close, said crappie. And I can see that for sure. Like, I guess panfish in general are very popular, so that doesn't surprise me. But that's going to be your number 1 answer from the Tackle Talk listeners. Number 1 was crappie with 18.5% of the vote, followed pretty closely by trout at number 2 with 15.4% of the vote. And then third was walleye at 12.3. Those are your 3 answers that had above double-digit percentages. Crappie number 1, trout number 2, walleye number 3. And then as we get into what I'll call, I guess, our mid-tier responses, pike was up next on the list with 7.7%. I can tell you pike is nowhere near making my list personally. I hate pike. Muskie are awesome. Pike, not so much to me. Pike are slimy. They're stinky. They are aggressively thrashing turds that steal your baits when you're targeting other species. Meanwhile, muskie are like their awesome cousin that are more challenging. They're prettier. They're cleaner. They're more powerful. They're just a kind of better version of a pike to me. So if a muskie is like a beautifully cooked 16-ounce ribeye steak, then I would say a pike is like week-old leftover meatloaf in the fridge. I'm just not a pike guy. But then right below pike was muskie at 6.2%. So that hurts a little bit, right? Pike is 1.5% ahead of muskie. Ouch. But then as we keep going here, you've got salmon and steelhead, and then you have bluegill, catfish, striped bass, all with like 4 to 5% of the vote. And then below that, you have a ton of responses in that like 3% and under. You get halibut, sturgeon, redfish, snook, carp, tarpon, white bass, sunfish, snakehead, lingcod. So you're starting to see a lot of like saltwater species mentioned here. But overall, I guess we can have a clear winner of crappie was our number 1 answer, with trout taking second place and walleye taking number 3. All right, everybody, we're going to get to the mailbag here in just a second to finish off the show. And before we do, I just want to give you a quick reminder that if you want to submit your own mailbag question to be heard on an upcoming episode of Tackle Talk, all you got to do, go over to www.tackletalkpodcast.com/mailbag.
This is the Tackle Talk Podcast Mailbag, powered by Amped Outdoors, your source for premium, affordable lithium batteries.
All right, our first question here is from Kevin, who says, "Hey, Andrew, when it comes to kayak fishing, how much wind do you consider too dangerous to be out on the water? If you've ever been out on the water when the wind has gotten dangerous, how do you handle it, keeping yourself as safe as possible? Thanks for your weekly content and advice, Kevin." Good question, Kevin. So that's a question that has like a pretty subjective answer. Like, I don't think there's a magic number for wind. I don't think if you look at the wind, it says, 13.5 miles an hour. Like, that's like the danger number. No, I don't think there is a one size fits all when it comes to wind. But for me, it's not even the sheer wind speed. It's how is that wind affecting the water that I'm on? Like, what's the water doing? So for instance, I'm a river rat. So wind affects the river very, very differently than it affects a big, wide open lake. In the river, the irony is that it can either exaggerate the wind if you get like a strong north or south wind, or it can completely shelter you from an east or west wind. So there are days where it's like 10 mile an hour, but it is a straight north or south wind and it makes the river miserable. And then there are days where it's 20 mile an hour, but it's an east or west wind and the river fishing is perfectly fine in a lot of spots. It all depends on direction. But I will say that usually smaller bodies of water don't get dangerous with that heavy wind. They just get annoying because the wind usually isn't the worst part. You're not going to get like tipped over because of the wind. You're getting tipped over or thrown over because of giant waves and whitecaps. Usually that's like the big danger for me. So on big water, like a big lake, I mean, you could have some even mediocre winds that turn ugly really, really fast. So I'm looking at wave conditions. If I see white caps, I'm usually thinking about packing it in. If I just see little rollers, depending on the size, I'll stick them out sometimes, but that's with like 10 plus years of kayak experience and being very, very comfortable in my kayak and knowing exactly where that line is between sketchy but doable and actually dangerous. But then if I'm on big water, like Lake Erie, I saw that firsthand last year, how quickly an okay day can turn ugly with just a little bit of wind direction change. It got us midday, and then all of a sudden you're taking like gallons and gallons of water over the front haul every 5 seconds, and it feels like you're about to sink out there. That was a little rough. So I think the answer isn't necessarily like a wind number, because that 12-mile-an-hour wind affects every body of water so differently, because you can get tree lines and coves and different kind of things that can protect you a little bit from that wind, or the lack of those things can hang you out to dry, like I said, even on moderately windy days. So I would say it all comes down to experience, but I've learned over the years, especially early on, err on the side of caution. If there is even a little wind, wear a life jacket for sure. That's like goes without saying. But then go with a buddy, have a plan. Don't stay too far away from the bank. Dress for the conditions. Also, don't take big waves sideways. If you do get stuck out there, I've gotten into trouble when I've started to take waves sideways in the kayak. Like there's a little bit of you that your instincts go, okay, I don't want to hit this like head on or have it sneak up behind me. So I'll maybe try and like ease over sideways. That's like one of the worst things you can do. So I like to take heavy waves straight on, or at like a really, really, really slight angle, but still mostly head on. Or you can go like at your back, depending on your kayak and how big the waves actually are. But my preference for sure is head on. And yeah, just be safe out there. When in doubt, get out. I think that's an easy way to look at it. Chances are that if the wind is bad enough that you're starting to second guess some things, you're probably not out there smashing fish anyway. So in that instance, is it really worth taking the chance to get hurt? Or even worse, no, you're probably not missing out on like the best day of fishing of your life by going in if the wind is that bad. You're probably not having a great day anyway. All right, the next question here is from Brendan, who says, "Hey, Andrew, I was wondering if you've ever gone microfishing or multi-species fishing. I watched John Dalton of Creek Fishing Adventures on YouTube, and he got me into using some ultralight gear and lures. It's really fun and makes catching small fish more exciting. I was wondering if you ever got into targeting smaller panfish species before, or if you've ever looked into it. Thanks for always bringing insightful and entertaining information to the industry. Give them the beans, Brendan." Well, Brendan, thanks for writing in. I appreciate it. Yeah, technically, I guess I've gone microfishing, but I didn't know that I was microfishing at the time. Like, it probably would have been when I was a kid, because growing up, we fished a lot of creeks, and there was a tiny little creek behind my grandparents' house that we fished all the time. And that creek ran throughout town, and we would fish it at multiple spots. And those creeks were so small that you were essentially microfishing without knowing it. So you were talking like really teeny tiny bait holder hooks the size of your pinky nail, little worm pieces, and then you're catching like creek chubs and stuff. So that's what we would do to pass the time, especially in the summertime. So yeah, I guess that probably counts as microfishing, but no, I haven't done it as an adult specifically, like gone out and targeted super tiny fish with really light tackle in these tiny little streams. But I'm sure it's like anything else. I'm sure it is really fun if you do it and do it the right way. And then, yeah, the multi-species side in general, I really do like watching John and his YouTube channel. I think he does a great job. Very small water. Like you said, multi-species, just good old-fashioned bass fishing. He's definitely somebody worth watching. Good shout out there. But I guess when we talked about multi-species fishing in the fishing pole a few minutes ago, my answers were a little bit more on like the larger fish side. I mean, my answers were like muskie, walleye, saugeye, hybrids. So those are the other way of multi-species, not on the micro-fishing side. I guess you could probably call my choices macro fishing if you wanted to go the opposite. But you can learn so much from multi-species fishing. So whether it is big species, small species, if you are, micro fishing, fly fishing, ice fishing, all of those different types of fishing definitely, I think, make you a more well-rounded angler. And yeah, it is a lot of fun to go out and fish someplace that everybody just completely passes and writes off. And there are fun opportunities in even that small, like ankle deep water if you fish it the right way. I've seen people fish in water that like you can't even get your whole foot wet in, and they're catching these tiny little micro species that look like a lot of fun, and species I probably didn't even know were in the water. So yeah, if I had more time, I would probably at least try my hand at microfishing, because I'm sure it is fun every once in a while. All right, and then our last question here is from Sean, who says, with the NFL draft upon us and so many experts guessing who will be drafted in what rounds by whom, I want to get your expert opinion. With the use of forward-facing sonar and the ability to better tell the size of the bass the pros are casting to, will anybody ever break Dean Rojas's single-day record of 45 pounds and 2 ounces? If so, predict who and or what lake it will be broken at, if ever. Thanks again for your family-friendly show, Sean. Oh boy, that's a fun one, I guess. That's totally opposite of what the mailbag usually is. This will be a fun hypothetical, I guess. Do I think that Dean Rojas's 45-pound, 2-ounce bag will ever be broken? If we start there, yes. I definitely think it will be broken at some point, especially with all of our technological advances. I know you mentioned a couple of those, but even with all of those advances and the new tech, it's going to have to be the perfect body of water at the perfect time. And you also have to figure in the fact that these guys have strategy to what they're doing out there, and they may sometimes be finding fish that would be able to be put together for a 45-pound bag on these fisheries, but it's a 4-day tournament, so they strategically spread out the fish that they have found versus leaning on all of those best fish and those best spots on one day. So that adds a wrinkle to it too. There are probably times where guys, if they would have just run and gun and fished their exact best stuff like day one right out the gate and had like no reservations for the remaining 3 days, then maybe they would have got closer. I don't know. That's an interesting thing to think about. But yes, I do think we will see that record broken at some point. We're seeing record weights across the board at these fisheries, so it's just a matter of time, I think. Now, where do I think it'll be broken? I think there's a lot of places that you could break it at, but you have to figure into where do the Elite Series and places like that actually go. So like I could sit here all day and say, hey, Falcon Lake could be the place that they break it at because it has the potential to be. But the sad truth is that the Bassmaster Elite Series does not go to Falcon Lake. I think the last time they went to Falcon was like 2008. So even though that is a fishery that could do it, you can't say that as your answer because the guys aren't going there in the regular season. So I guess my vote would have to be Lake Fork. I would say maybe second option, like a sneakier option would be Santee, but I think Lake Fork probably has to be your like prediction if you're going to say that that's going to get beat at some point somewhere. And I'll even go out on a limb and say I think that record will probably be broken in the next 10 years. I just think it is a matter of time before someone drops a mega bag at one of these fisheries, especially like you said with forward-facing sonar and all of the tech and everybody getting so much better. And then you said if I could pick who it would be. That's a tough one because it could be anybody at any given time. All these guys that made that series have the capability of doing that. But I think the safe pick is probably Trey McKinney, I guess. He put up 4 straight Dirty 30s at Lake Fork in 2024. He won that event very handily with over 130 pounds for those 4 days. So I guess if you're making me stick my neck out there and pick a single person, Trey probably has to be that pick. I know that's a pretty chalk pick, but I'll go with Trey McKinney. I'll go with Lake Fork, and I will go with yes, it will be broken. I'll even say in the next 10 years. All right, everybody, that is our episode today. Thank you guys so much for tuning in to Tackle Talk. As always, if you have any questions, anything I can help with, shoot me an email, shoot me a DM. As a reminder, every single product that we talked about from Amazon is linked below. So you can go click on those and take a look at the exact products we were talking about today. If you guys want to make it easy, if you guys want to order any of those, be sure to stop by the website, tackletalkpodcast.com, so you can submit your own mailbag question. You can participate in next week's fishing poll, and you can just keep up with everything we're doing here at Tackle Talk. And with that, just a big thank you again for listening, and I will see you right back here next Tuesday for another brand new episode of Tackle Talk.
Thank you for listening to the Tackle Talk podcast. Tackle Talk is produced by Andrew Hayes. Copyright 2019. For more, please subscribe on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you listen to podcasts.